Ahn'Qiraj, the weird blend of Egyptian aesthetics and insectoid creatures. Add some sci-fi elements into it and you have this raid. Hello everyone, my name is EK and today's video will be a bit different. When I did the Molten Core raid on voice comms a while back, I realized that trying to focus on the comms and my gameplay and the commentary all at the same time while doing something completely new to me just did not work. I felt like I just did terrible at all three, so for this video I decided to record the entire run without commentary so I could focus on the comms and my gameplay exclusively. Alright, preamble out of the way, let's go through the raid. I made my way to the entrance and saw way more people than I have ever seen outside of a major town. Note that this was recorded 2 days before Next Rammus comes out, so people are probably trying to squeeze out a bit more gear before heading in there. I checked some best in slot lists and decided to reserve the Wand of Qiraji Nobility and the sharpened Silithid Femur. We'll see what we can get. The first trash mobs are Anubis-inspired giants aptly named Anubiseth Sentinels. Little did I know they have a reflect and I completely one-shot myself. Whoops! Fortunately, the rest of my group does seem to know what's going on, and after clearing some more trash, we make it to the first fight of the raid. Say hello to the Prophet Scarab. I wasn't able to figure out many of his mechanics, but I did notice some split ability that made copies of the boss appear. Not knowing what I was looking for, I decided to just follow whatever target the melee group started hitting, and assuming that was my job as well. About 2 minutes later, the boss died, and we get to move on. We find a quest NPC who seemingly has some lore for us, so I spam click through it as to not slow the raid down. However, now that we have some time on our hands, let me read you guys a bedtime story. 1,000 years ago, when the War of the Shifting Sands ended, 3 of our kin sacrificed themselves and held the Qiraji inside these halls, while Ahn'Qiraj and Staghelm sealed Ahn'Qiraj's shot. Each of us vowed to look for Merithra, Arygos and Celestras should the Scarab Wall ever fail, and fall it did. And so we came. We sensed the presence of our enslaved brethren deeper inside Ahn'Qiraj, yet not even an army of dragons would be enough to rescue them, no. The same spell that imprisoned them would place us firmly under Cthulhu's control should we come any closer to him. The old god has foreseen our arrival. All hope is lost. What difference could a mere mortal like you possibly make? Killing one Qiraji lord is a notable accomplishment for a mortal, EK. They are, however, numerous and powerful. Continue to defeat them to prove your worth as our champion. You continue to serve us well, EK. Our pact remains in place. As we push deeper into the raid, we enter a much more insectoid-looking area and encounter Vecnis warriors. Trash mobs with a pretty cool ability where they explode into many smaller mobs known as Vecnis borers. I can only assume these can overwhelm you rather quickly if you are not expecting them. Further into the tunnels we find 3 bosses that we need to fight at the same time. As far as I know, this fight is called the Trio. I am not too sure about the mechanics at play here, but we are making sure we kill Princess Yauj first. Is that the pronunciation? Yauj? Yauj? I have no idea, guys. It seems the tanks are pulling them apart to make sure we have less pressure on us to kill our target. As with many of these fights, I can only assume lots of mechanics are at play that I am simply not aware of. I was contemplating looking up all the information and add it to the video. However, there are many guides out there, so I don't think it really adds much to my video, and it allows me to keep this video slightly more concise. Alright, let's move on. More trash out of the way and we make our way to the next boss. This one consistent of not just 3 mobs, but 4. It seems there's one primary target in Battleguard Sartura, and 3 identical smaller targets known as Sartura's Royal Guard. Unfortunately, it seems they have a rather strong spin to win ability, and because I am a super greedy DPS player that can't cancel its ability and has to finish his Shadowbolt cast, I die to one of these spins. The next trash section is rather interesting to me. We have the entire raid run through more mobs than I have seen in this game, and I believe they even might respawn. So, the objective, as far as I was able to make out, is to move through it somewhat quickly, having the tanks try and pull aggro as the healers keep us alive. Standing still to kill them is no option, and forward is the only way. We do make it to the other side of the hive, and then we accidentally pull the next boss. Fortunately, it seems to be not too difficult. Frankris the Unyielding, as this beauty of a boss is called, summons worms called Spawn of Frankris. I do not know what they do, but I am tasked with taking them out as quickly as I can, so I can only assume they are dangerous. Not too much else seems to be happening from my point of view, so we move on to the next boss. Viscidus, a giant slime that reminds me of the big ooze in the Sunken Temple, seems to have more going on. I get turned into an insect myself. At this point, I am a bit afraid to start casting any damage on the boss. I start wondering whether the change has any harmful effects to me or the party maybe, so I really slow my DPS down. Now during the boss, I did also notice some tiny oozes spawn called Glob of Viscidus that were moving towards the boss. I can only assume that we need to kill these quickly before they regroup in the middle. However, I was too busy figuring out what kind of alien I turned into to really focus on the oozes. After a bit of consideration, I do fire at the boss and shortly after get hit with some AoE goop ability that seemed to put out some damage over time on us as well as a hefty chunk of damage instantly. Me and 2 others died while the rest of the group manages to mostly stay alive as we clear the boss. We clear some more trash and one of our tanks gets extremely annoyed with the range DPS. It seems people are unleashing abilities before he gets any aggro. From this point onward, he takes every opportunity he can get to flame the range DPS. I can only assume the whole range DPS wait until I get aggro rage is a common thing in WoW endgame. Fortunately, because I was being very careful as to not mess up the raid, it was not me this time, as I patiently awaited my turn to strike. Alright, next boss, Princess Huhuran. We are told to spread out a bit and healers are asked to be mindful of big burst damage coming out near the end of the fight. Well, I don't know if the mechanic didn't happen or if we are just simply gods, but this boss went down with little more than a gust of wind. About an hour and 10 minutes into the raid, we make it to the next boss encounter. This one takes place in a rather big room and has 2 bosses. They are called Emperor Veclor and Emperor Vecnilash. We are told that ranged DPS needs to focus one of them, and the melee DPS needs to focus the other. I'm assuming that they take more and less damage based on their proximity to the damage source, and that's why we're spreading the different damage types to the different bosses. During the fight, these guys swap around a couple of times, and we need to swap accordingly. I do at one point become a bit confused as to which one I need to focus. Fortunately, I can look around the room and quite easily identify which group is doing range damage and which one is melee. So I just joined the side that has projectiles flying all over the place. One other thing to note is that there is also these eye tentacles that spawn during the fight that we are tasked with taking out as quickly as we can. Once again, I am not entirely sure what they do, but it can't be anything good. We clear the fight with minimal deaths, and we move on. The trash in this area is interesting, as we have a clear priority as to which ones we want to kill first. Most notably are the Mind Flayers. They seem to cast an AoE fear upon death. This disrupts the group and can make it hard to deal with the other adds. I believe the general idea is to kill these last. So we first kill the Slayers, then we kill the Champions, and then finally we kill the Mind Flayers. Alright, next boss, a giant sandworm named Uro. I actually really like this boss as he feels most similar to Guild Wars 2 bosses. He has a mechanic where a giant eye appears and you need to turn your character away from him. He also uses a sweep ability that casts a big knockback and Sandblast that presumably just does damage in front of him. We were told that if we get aggro, we need to just stand next to the boss and tank the hits, most likely resulting in our death. Not moving into the boss and staying with the rest of the group would most likely result in a wipe. Now, I don't know why this is the case, but I assume he has a big damaging ability that you don't want in your squishies. Maybe Sandblast is the one? Anyway, we kill him with a few dead again and keep pushing forward. The end is getting near. We make our way to the heart of the raid, and one final boss awaits us. So, you know how we had some eyeball-themed tentacles in the fight with the 2 bosses? Well, that seemed to have been a preview for what was to come. Cthulhu, the final boss of the raid, is a giant eyeball. He has way more raid-wide mechanics than I have had to deal with so far, and he is for sure my favorite raid encounter in the entire game so far. So, let's talk about our friendly eyeball. Upon entering the room, we were tasked with spreading around depending on our subgroup within the raid. Being 40 people, we had 8 groups and we spread around Cthulhu like we were a slice of delicious salami pizza. From my understanding, this spreading is done because he has some sort of chain lightning ability that you do not want to overlap. So you want to make sure you are only with a few people to minimize the damage being spread around. After a while, Cthulhu casts a giant laser beam from his eye that feels extremely similar to Sebathar's flamethrower, for any Guild Wars 2 players around here. The laser beam moves around the room in a counterclockwise direction until it has moved approximately 180 degrees. This means we move to the opposite side of the boss when this laser beam happens. When the beam disappears, we move back to our original locations and continue damaging the boss. During the encounter, eye tentacles keep spawning and we, especially as the ranged DPS, are tasked with taking them out. I still don't know what they do, but they are probably dangerous. When you start the encounter, the boss is called the Eye of Cthulhu, and it's not that hard. However, when you get him to 0% and expect him to die, it turns out that was only phase 1. Cthulhu now properly takes its place in the center of the arena and the real fight begins. We regroup near the entrance and are told we need to kill giant versions of the earlier eye tentacles as quickly as we can. We also on occasion need to move into the room and range down the smaller tentacles that have spawned. This is also where a rather interesting new mechanic appears. Cthulhu can consume players, and when you are consumed, you end up inside him. There are 2 giant eye tentacles in there with health bars. We are tasked with bringing them down to low HP, but making sure one of them stays alive with some health. There also seems to be some sort of stacking debuff on us when we are inside him, and we need to step on a platform to get out before the stacks get too high. Now something needs to happen outside before we kill the tentacles inside. This part of the fight reminds me a lot of Guild Wars 2's Triple Trouble Worm, where you get absorbed by him, you bring the spears, you throw the spears inside him. It was probably influenced by this encounter. That's most of his mechanics. We had 1 full wipe, and on the second attempt we did take him out with about half the raid dead on the floor. So let's have a short chat about the raid experience before moving on to the loot. Overall, I like this approach as it allowed me to focus a bit more on what was going on while also being able to form a more concise opinion before writing this script. The entire raid took about 2 hours. This includes the single wipe we had at the end and some minor mechanic breakdowns in the fight where it was necessary. Personally, I would have liked a bit more information about the boss mechanics, as most of them were one-liners talking about a single thing that we needed to either do or not do. However, I understand that my complete lack of knowledge about the raid mechanics before going in is a rather rare situation, and I can't realistically expect the raid leader to dedicate more time than necessary to explain things that 90% of the raid already knows. Because of this lack of detailed explanations, there were honestly multiple bosses where I didn't know what was going on, and I was kind of just spamming DPS hoping for the best. I personally did really like a few of the bosses though. The Sandworm was cool because I liked the eye mechanic. Sartura, the spin to win boss, was fun because it put my greed for Shadow Bolt on full display for everyone to see. And Cthulhu obviously was the highlight of the raid for me. That guy is insane, that guy is super cool. I will do a small section talking about the loot in real time after the scripted part is over. However, the loot system in general felt fairly similar to Zul'Gurub. It seems there are these items that drop from bosses that you can hand into quest NPCs to get gear pieces. These quest rewards require certain thresholds of reputation and were distributed in the raid based on who could use the item immediately. This means I had to forgo all those drops as I am still very far away from being able to hand them in. Alright, that's it for the script. Please do let me know how you like this approach to me covering the raid. I'm thinking about just using this format moving forward for raiding content, as it's much less multitasking heavy. Alright, now let me jump over to real time where we can have a bit of a chat about all the gear drops that we got. Alright, welcome back to the more usual part of the video. I hope you guys like that. I actually spent quite a lot of time on this. I quite enjoy doing it, honestly. It was way more work than my usual videos, especially on a per minute basis. You know, I actually spent multiple hours editing that thing down and trying to like match the video footage and stuff, and it was quite fun to do. But I'm very, very curious to see what you guys think of it, because it's a very different thing than any of the other content I've done so far for the entire WoW series. So please give me all your feedback. let me know. Just very quickly, I was thinking, do I want to make it like much longer, like much more in detail? But I decided in the end, you know, I was like fine-tuning my script, and in the end I decided, hey, let me make it concise, let me make it short for once, and let me make sure that I just get the information in there that was useful. I don't have any guide stuff in there except for like the Cthulhu stuff a little bit, because I just really enjoy talking about it. But everything you saw was just what I figured out. I hope some of the stuff I said was correct. There was probably a lot of wrong stuff in there, but I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me trying to figure things out in post, kinda, but they were my thoughts that I was going through as I was playing the content, kind of just like noted them down mentally, and then I talked about them in a script. I got 2 drops, and I really haven't talked about loot at all in the video, because I didn't really get too much. I talked about how there was this stuff that you can get, which is like this reputation-bound stuff for gear and stuff. I had to decline all of it, because I just, you know, the way it works is you start with the Brute of Nosdormu, you start at Hated. I got 17.5k in one run, so you do get quite a lot per run. I guess one more run will roughly get me there, probably not quite, but it will be very close to getting me all the way over to where I need to be to, I guess from Hated, you go to Unfriendly, and then but that's only 3k, I guess, maybe. So that should be very quickly. And then you go to Neutral quite quickly. So I guess the initial part, like the Hated part to Unfriendly, is very slow. But then like it becomes quicker, and then it becomes better again, or like longer again. I guess that's how it works, because like the 2 ends are very long, right? So you kind of speed up the process a little bit. So I guess it doesn't take too much time to ramp up once you're past the first stage, but I don't know how that works. Anyway, it just meant that I couldn't get the gear, and that I had to deal with whatever I found. Now, I did find 2 things, and I honestly don't really know if they're better, and I'm looking kind of to you guys for input here. So we have been rocking a main hand and an offhand for this entire time, and I did drop, or well, I kind of rolled for it. I didn't get any of the stuff that I reserved, because it just, well, one of them did drop the, like the main hand thing dropped, but someone else also had double reserve for it, and then that person won the roll, so I didn't get it. But I did get this one by just randomly rolling for it, because, you know, it was an unreserved item. So I have the Staff of the Ahn'Qiraj Prophets. Pretty cool item. I mean, it doesn't look too great. Like, it looks quite alright. I mean, actually, to be fair, I kind of like it. Actually, you know what? I kind of like it. But the thing with the weapon is that, of course, it is a... Actually, let me equip these 2, because it makes it a lot easier to compare. Because then I can see all 3 of them at the same time. So the thing with the 2-hand, of course, is that you can't just compare it to the main hand. You have to compare it to the main hand and the offhand. Now, the damage per second that we get additionally, I just don't care about. You know, it's melee damage. I honestly couldn't care less. But we do get plus 20 intellect. Now, plus 20 intellect sounds quite nice. You know, get some more spell crits. That's great. So far, so good. We also get plus 15 spirit. Once again, this does translate a little bit into more damage due to the conversion that is on the Fel armor. Then also we get 13 more stamina, a bit more HP. Do I really need it? Maybe not. Is it nice to have? Yes, definitely. And a bit of healing, which I don't care about. But then we lose plus 37 bonus damage, and we also lose our critical strike 1% chance as well. Now, we do get something in return for it. We get your damaging spellcast have a chance to summon visions of the Ahn'Qiraj Prophets, which sounds really cool, and I actually haven't really tried it yet, and I don't know exactly how it works. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's just like thematically fun. I don't know, guys. So, to me, the weapons are kind of similar. I don't know if I'm fine giving up 1% crit chance and 37 spell power for 20 intellect and 15 spirits. Maybe? So guys, please do let me know what you think. I mean, I'd love to upgrade to a different weapon. I'd love to be able to use this just so we have something different to play with for a bit while we're, you know, working on getting better gear. But yeah, I'm gonna need your input on this, because honestly, I don't know if this is better. If it's like the same, if the math works out that it's like pretty much identical, I'll probably just rock this just because we'll have something different. But I don't want to like actively downgrade. And I you know, I'm trying to do the math in my head, but I would have to like grab a proper calculator, like a WoW gear calculator or something, and really like work this out. And if you guys can do this much easier because you're experts, then please do let me know. Anyway, we have one more drop, which is the Borrower Braces. Now, the Borrower Braces also are rather interesting because they do give me 10 more armor, nice to have. They give me 3 more intellect, nice to have. We lose 10 spirit, a bit rough, but not the worst thing in the world, I guess. And we lose 2 stamina. Also, don't really care too much about 20 HP. Then we also get 10 more spell power. And 10 more spell power is something that makes me very happy generally. However, we do lose the set bonus that says increases the attack power and spell damage from your demon that your demon pet gains from your attributes by 20%. And I think that's actually a fairly large amount of damage, isn't it? I think that set bonus is quite strong. I don't really care too much about the 5 set bonus, I've realized, just because I don't run the Master Demonologist talent, which, just so you're clear, it is this talent right here, which says grounds both the Warlock and the Summoned Demon in effect as long as the demon is active. And I think the Felguard, as far as I've been told, will benefit from all of these. So running a Felguard with Master Demonologist can be quite a fun build, I think. But yeah, I don't really care about the 5 set bonus, but I think I do care about the 3 set bonus, right? Like the attack power and spell damage my demon pet gains from my attributes. And because I'm getting more into like the late game part now, like I'm getting way more attributes in general, so the conversion for 20% is quite a lot of damage. But once again, I don't know how the math works out. Do I care about this, or do I rather equip the Borrower Braces? Also, they are time worn. And I don't know what time worn is. Now, I can Google this, and I probably will Google this, but I just haven't done so yet. But I'm assuming Time Worn is something. There's also, I think now there's like Sanctified gear from Naxxramas, which I've heard about, which I think is better against the undead guys you have to fight in Naxxramas. But I don't know if Time Worn has a similar effect, so I'll have to look into that as well. But once again, I don't know if it's better. So yeah, 2 gear drops, which kind of cool. Don't know if I care about them, but you know, we got them. Anyway, that's gonna be the video. It's gonna be a bit of a shorter one, I guess, and you know, half the video is me rambling and half the video is like highly edited. So once again, let me know what you think. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you again next time, where most likely we'll be doing Blackwing Lair, I think, hopefully. Okay, bye bye guys.